All right, guys, so we finally have our RADXA X2L arrive from overseas. As you guys know, this is the board that I've been talking about. If you get the entry-level version, which costs $39, you can get the 2GB model. However, I paid a little bit more for the 8GB version. But this is the one that I've been hyping over, talking about a lot in regards to x86. This has an x86 processor. It is currently using the J4 125 Intel Celeron processor. And you can get a lot of good emulation out of this, even though this is a low-powered or low-profile single-board computer using x86. And again, I've said in my previous videos, this will run circles around a Pi 4, and in most cases a Pi 5, and even the orange Pi 5, because it's x86. Now, my last video, I did make a mistake. I said that I bought the case. They don't have any cases for this. However, they do have a Palm version coming out with this, which has the in full case, the full enclosure with this in the case, which is going to sell for about $99. But this particular version, based upon the 3 websites that you can order this from, is currently sold out. So that's really unfortunate. But we're finally glad to have this here. This is not the case. This is the $699 fan and heatsink. So I also have my thermal paste. We're going to go ahead and apply this. As my understanding, this also comes with a thermal pad. You can't remove that off of here, so we're going to go ahead and get this out of the cellophane and go ahead and get this up and running. But again, for you home arcade modders and those of you who are in the retro gaming scene, this is a must-have. No development, quick plug and play, easy access. Again, this will work for your NESs, your Atari games, all the way up to PlayStation 2. I've got further confirmation that this will run even some of the most demanding PlayStation 2 games. So I have that confirmed. This will run Blitz, your Killer Instincts. You guys know, you're familiar with all the ROMs that are typically hard to emulate on ARM, like with RetroPie, Batacera, and some of the other front ends that are out there. And I will be running the x86 version of RetroPie, which you guys will see a little bit of that today. I haven't made an official video of that, but you guys will see a little bit of that with this. But again, this is a great chip, great processor, 4 threads, 2 gigahertz. The clock speed goes all the way up to 2.7 gigahertz on this. 4 USB ports, Ethernet. I don't believe this has Wi-Fi. You also have to buy a Wi-Fi Bluetooth module adapter. That's not a big deal. Again, we can load Windows on this, Ubuntu, Linux, and some of the other front ends that are out there, or other distros that are available. So let's go ahead and get into this. You know what time it is. All right, so before we move into looking at the rest of the board and taking a look at the specs, we're going to take a look at some of the benchmark results I received on Geekbench 6. Now you can see there is the RADXA X2L and marked AAAA there at the top. I have no idea why it registers like this in the system. The single core test came up as 375 with a multi-core score of 1037. Now keep in mind, because we're running Windows and because this is a low-powered x86, please do not be deceived. This thing is a killer emulation system as far as what you need for performance. Now, if you look at the very bottom, you can see where the Raspberry Pi 5 scores at around 873, 886. But please do not use any of those results to judge exactly how this board can perform. In fact, I've actually covered that in a previous video on how some of these boards can outperform some of their ARM-based companions. We also have here some of our 3D Mark bench test scores, as well as our GPU score of 1,364. That is on the Intel HD chip. We have a few 3D Mark scores here registering at 987, 1,672 for Night Raid. But all in all, for a board price at this specific price point, starting out at $39.99, this far exceeds my expectations. This is definitely what was reasonable in terms of what you should be paying for, looking at price to performance. All right, so as I said, I got this from overseas, and I know quite a few of you were really disappointed you couldn't really jump on this. Really wasn't expecting that video to really do that well. I know this really wasn't really talked about too much, and in fact, when Pi Maniac first pointed this out to me, he actually just told me recently he didn't know that this was an x86 single board computer. But again, I've made a few videos in regards to x86 versus ARM. There's no development needed. All your basic PC stuff will run on here, you know, as long as it's well within specs. I should be able to run my XSplit broadcaster, live stream, and do everything from this. Again, this isn't going to run your most demanding PC applications, but this will run all your bare minimal stuff that'll pretty much do the job. Now, I don't have a case for this, so I may end up just using the box. Again, they do have a Palm version coming out, which does have the full shell for this, but you can't beat this for 40 bucks. Now, this is the 8 GB version. I think I paid like $55, $56 or something like that for this, but I mean, it's a no-brainer. And I could have opted to get the cheaper one, and this, I have to say, this is actually nicely packaged. You don't see too many single board computers out there nicely packaged. Some of these companies just toss something in there and hope you figure it out. But you know, with this, I opted to get something a little bit more because I didn't want to get the 4 GB model, because I wanted to actually test this for all you guys and show you the full scope of what this can currently do. But just take a look at this. It's a little bit bigger than a Raspberry Pi and an Orange Pi, so let me go ahead and pull out, well, that's not Orange Pi, that's the Raspberry Pi in the box. All right, so there's the Raspberry Pi 5. You guys can make that out. This board is a little wider, a little thicker. See that there. So let's go ahead and get the Orange Pi 5 here. So there's the Orange Pi 5. Next to this, it's a little bigger, a little bulkier, I must have to admit, but for an entry-level cost of 40 bucks, you can't beat this. 50 bucks, it's no-brainer. You got your little slot here for your M.2. You also have all of your GPIO pins. So this would be another comparable board to, let's say, a Raspberry Pi 5 or a Raspberry Pi 4. Not just in terms of performance, but just in terms of specs. Because remember, again, this is a single board computer. It has GPIO pins, so this would more or less be equivalent, let me just pull this out, to the UE2 X1 single board computer, which is also x86. Not as powerful as this one, because this one has a better chipset in here, but as you can see, it's a little bit bigger with the form factor. And then, of course, we have our standard mini PC. It's a little wider, thicker than that. So just to give you guys some size comparison. So let's go ahead and get a little bit of thermal paste on here, as well as I do have some standoffs from another project. We're going to go ahead and use these. See if we could get some of these standoffs in here. We don't have anything included, so let's make sure that we can use this. Now, the cool thing is, the one thing I like about it is, even though this box, or actually it doesn't come with any standoffs or anything, you guys may want to get some. I don't believe that these are the standard M.2 subsets of screws that you typically use for a board like this, but you can use the box as a placeholder. So you can keep this in the box if you don't plan on using standoffs, but I don't think that's really a big deal. It would have been nice. And of course, we have our other M.2 slot down there on the bottom for storage. And again, we have our 2 USB 3.0 ports, 2 HDMI ports here. And then over here, we have 2 USB 2.0s, as well as a restart button there. And you know, they've really started putting a lot of these on here, especially on the newer boards. Looks like we also have a battery here for our motherboard, but everything looks like, doesn't look like there's too many other connections on here. I know some of these other boards that I've recently received, you know, have additional microphones and stuff. But again, this is low profile, something simple. If you guys want to use this for home and office use, this will also work great. I've never used this particular chipset before, but based upon the stats and numbers that I've seen, this would, you know, work for just typing up any type of documents and so forth just fine. But again, we primarily got this for emulation. So let's go ahead and get this set up. We're going to apply a little bit of thermal paste, and let's take a look and see what this heatsink looks like. With the fan, and you know, the pictures, they actually looked a little bigger for these, but $699 wasn't too bad, so it's not like you're breaking the bank. I know some of these single board computers, they were just ridiculous, you know. And if you guys have watched my previous video Oh, that's pretty nice. Looks very nicely made. I was kind of concerned for a little bit, but this looks nicely made here. Then of course we have our fan port, which we will insert. Nice little port there. Go ahead and get started there at the top. Nice little finish, but yeah, this is definitely well made. Let me take a look here and see if there's any other type of connections on here. I don't see anything that I could be missing. I know some of these other single board computers, they have little marks or little holes, not these particular ones, but where you have a RF field meter and you can hook up some additional accessories to it. Pretty ingenious, but I don't see anything on here extra. We have our audio jack, which has been pulled off of the Raspberry Pi 5. So you do get that there. That's an excellent solution. And then of course, in some cases, you could also use this as your audio video port. So this is not just audio. If you guys have that audio video connection, you can also use that for video as well for a composite connection or setup. All right, so let's get our layout going. I want to see how this applies. Doesn't look like there's any type of screws. And then we also have our thermal pad. So we have a little paste here, a little filament. All right, looks like it already comes pre-done for you, but we're still gonna add a little bit more. I typically don't trust these. I don't think that they're really sufficient for what you need, but that's why we have our thermotate grease to go ahead and take care of issues like that. All right, so let's go ahead and get this done, and then we'll get right back into it. All right, so I've recorded the majority of this video back in early February of 2024, and since then I've made a few upgrades and improvements, or additions as you really want to say, to this board. So starting out, I did get the Wi-Fi Bluetooth module adapter. Setting that up did take a little bit of time, and I also added on the well-needed battery. Now, before I really got into my full review, I didn't really read all the exact specs as far as the battery. I saw that it was pretty much optional, but after looking at the performance differences, however, I can conclude that it is recommended and mandatory. So when I first started booting this up, I know we haven't gotten there to that part yet in the video, but it's a drastic difference, night and day. In fact, boot up times when you have the battery installed is probably about 2 seconds, literally. I'm not exaggerating. But without the battery, it takes a little bit of time for the system to really recognize that it does have an OS installed. All right, so now we're going to mount the heatsink directly to the board itself. The board already has 4 different screws in here, so we're just going to unscrew them at different various places. It looks a little weird as to where I need to screw them in, so let me go ahead and pull these out. Oops, I think I just dropped one. We got 1 out, 3, and 4. So let's go ahead and get these mounted in here. And based upon this position, there's no instruction manual, so we're just walking straight through this. So let's see, it should mount here. Should be 1, 2, 3, and then 4 over there on the back. So these should all line up perfectly. But before I do this and mount it, I want to make sure that I apply a little bit of thermal paste, as I always do now, to all of my single board computers. So that way we don't have any issues with overheating. And we can get the best out of this as humanly possible. All right, doesn't look like that mounts flush. All right, so we are pretty much set. So this is how we're gonna mount it. And so let's go ahead and get a little bit of thermal paste on here. I think it's trying to stick. So typically when you're dealing with a single board computer, even a motherboard, you already have maybe a heat sink that has a little bit of thermal paste to it. However, if you pull this pad off, and I know this was kind of strange, this pad allows you to stick directly to the chip. So without that pad, I know, again, there's no instructions or anything for this. You want to keep this pad on here because without it, if you try to put this on here, this is the heatsink, it's not going to make contact. So you want to make sure that you leave that on there so it can fully make contact. So let's go ahead and apply a little bit of thermal paste. And then we'll move on, get this set up, and jump into some gaming and performance tests. All right, now that we finally have this thing plugged in, I decided to use my portable battery pack, which supplied the right amount of voltage. There isn't an official adapter made for this thing, so you kind of have to source your own power supply. Now, after I started using the battery, I decided to use the Raspberry Pi 5 power adapter. Been using it now for a couple of months and have not noticed any issues. Now, I did use one of my other charger adapters I have in the house, and you know, it'll boot just fine, but because of the voltage limits, whatever the burst rate, so to speak, sometimes you may get some type of power fluctuations depending upon what you are doing. But to play it safe, just go ahead and use a Raspberry Pi 5 power adapter. In fact, a lot of these single board computers now are using those power requirements. In fact, I remember when the Pi 5 first came out, you know, we all talked about like, gee, that's a lot of power. But a lot of these boards are now kind of going in that direction. So if you are using a Raspberry Pi 5 power adapter, you should be fine using this. And I have not had any power fluctuations. This thing has not shut off in the past couple of months I've been using it. All right, and we are finally now booted up into our RADXA X2L. And to premiere this, we are booting up into RetroPie X86, also the Supreme Retro Gaming X1. I still haven't officially reviewed this and showcased it here, so you guys get a little bit of a sneak peek. And the unique thing about this particular image that we're running is that it does not require an OS. So this would be an alternative, let's say your baddest heroes or whatnot. Again, this hasn't been officially released. This is just something I've been using to test on some of my latest boards. Now with this particular board, I was able to run everything from, let's say, my lower end ROM set, let's say your Ataris or Apple IIs, all the way up to PlayStation 2. Now some of the games for PlayStation 2 will need some tinkering, and the cool thing about using this particular board is, let's say in comparison to, let's say, a Raspberry Pi 4 or Raspberry Pi 5, even though you could run, let's say, your Sega Redream and some Sega Saturns on that particular board, there's a lot of spot checking that needs to be done. So for example, we know that Killer Instinct, NFL Blitz, your current Evils are really difficult to emulate on those ARM chips. However, with this x86 processor, you really don't need to do a lot of spot checking. So it could get really frustrating when you're trying to create an image or work on a particular board, thinking that, you know, hey, these higher end systems will work, but we still have a lot of these lower end arcade ROMs that are still giving us a hard time. So with this, everything up to your PlayStation 2 ROM sets will work as they should, emulation wise. Now I did have some issues with Nintendo Switch. Obviously I know that the power is not there regardless of what type of optimizations I did do, but even comparing the RADXA X2L to the Raspberry Pi 5, this thing ran PlayStation emulation, PlayStation 2 emulation exceptionally well. In fact, I compared True Crime Streets of LA and True Crime Streets of New York, the comparison differences, and there was no tinkering or any optimizations that I needed to do to get an excellent emulation experience. The only difficulties that I did have as far as emulation wise was NFL Blitz. So I have to go back and recheck that. I shouldn't have had an issue, but I did notice sometimes it would speed up or even slow down. Now, typically that shouldn't happen with emulation. Maybe it was a particular setting that I was using or something that I could change, but that was really the only noticeable difference. So for 40 bucks, again, this is an exceptional board to get specifically for emulation. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at some of installing Windows operating system. I know some of you had questions about it. I did run into a few issues. So let's go ahead and show you how to set up Windows and also install the Wi-Fi Bluetooth adapter drivers. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and install Windows on the RADXA X2L. Now, for those of you who've never done this before, the first thing you will need to have is some type of USB or external USB storage device or M.2 drive. You will need to go to windows.com, download the ISO file to create a boot manager. You can use that using a external SD drive. Insert that into your X2L, and then we'll be ready to load Windows. Now, once we get to Windows, now typically, obviously this doesn't have an eMMC storage. We will need to create a disk partition because most normal drives won't accept the Windows format in order to run. So in order to do this, the first thing you want to do is once you get through your setup partition, Windows is going to ask you, where do you want to install Windows? And I do have a USB drive installed. I'm using a 480 gigabyte, it's actually 500 gigabyte SSD drive, Samsung. And as you can see, it's not letting me proceed forward. So what I need to do is hit on my keypad. I want to go function F10 and shift at the same time. And the first command we're going to type in is something called diskpart. Once you type in diskpart, D-I-S-K-P-A-R-T, you guys actually have that there listed on the screen. The next command you want to type in is list disk. Now my drive currently is disk number 2. It gives you a list that you guys can currently see on the screen, disk 0, 1, and 2. Now 0 is my USB thumb drive that I do have currently inserted within the drive. The disk 1 is some of the partition from the SSD. So we're going to go ahead and select disk 2, and this will allow us to install it to the USB or the external SSD drive that we have installed. So once we're going to go ahead and do that, now my drive is successfully converted over to GPT. So if you are typically using your SSD drives or your thumb drives on your computer, it's not going to be in this format, but in order for you to boot Windows on here, it needs to be in that format. Now we should be okay. We should be fine now to move over to the next step. Let's go ahead and refresh. All right, so the first installation method that I used to try to load Windows on the RADXA X2L did not work. The steps are correct, but what I didn't know about this board was that it would only boot from the M.2. And fortunately, I had an extra NVMe M.2 laying around. It would not boot or load Windows directly from a USB device. So that is something to keep in mind. However, again, I did all of this back in mid or early February, but as of mid-April, RADXA does have a new format or new method in order to get this installed. So what I had to do was go ahead and insert my M.2 drive into the RADXA board. The Windows operating system, in order to load it, was loaded on my Samsung USB 256 drive, and so we will be burning it directly to the Samsung 2 terabytes. So fortunately, I did have one of these laying around, and this method will work. So for some of you or any of you who may have had this frustration trying to install Windows, it wasn't typically straightforward as it typically would be if you were trying to get this set up on a regular computer. You will need to boot from an M.2. But again, they have in the past couple of months released an update that takes you through a number of different steps that will allow you to do that. But in all honesty, just install an M.2 drive into the M.2 slot and you'll pretty much be fine. All right, so now we are ready to boot Windows. We're going to go ahead and go through our steps once again. We're going to type in the same simple commands, and this will prepare our drive in order to write Windows OS to the M.2. All right, so the first option we are going to type in is list disk. And then you want to type in the second option that where it says diskpart. You want to type in select disk 0. Once you go to that option, you want to type in the next command, which is convert GPT. And then of course you want to type in clean for your next command. And this will prepare the drive to get ready to write the image directly to the M.2 on the RADXA X2L. You're going to go back, you're going to select the drive that you want to burn, and then you'll simply just write the image. All right, and as you can see, we are finally booted up into Windows 10. Now, for those of you looking for a license for your additional device, you can sign up for the Windows Insider program, and typically you do get a free key with that. But this is a phenomenal board. I promise you, you will not go wrong with this if you want to use this as an alternative to a standard mini PC. But please keep in mind, I know that there were reviews and other mini PCs selling mini PCs with this same processor, the J-type processor series, for about $250 about 2 or 3 years ago. So you're still getting that same performance for now the low cost of $39.99. Now this particular model that I am using is the 8GB version that does not have eMMC storage. I didn't need that, didn't need to pay the additional money to have it. I personally don't think that you guys will need it. You guys could go ahead and source your own M.2s. Now as far as additional gameplay, I was able to use or actually run Pinball FX as well as some of the other emulators. Now some of you have also asked me about the temperature requirements. These Intel Celeron chips are not like your ARM-based units, so but this particular chip can go up to about 104, about 105 degrees Celsius. So these can withstand a little bit more temperatures than your ARM counterparts, which will typically throttle somewhere at about 80 degrees Celsius. Now, honestly, I can go on and on about this board all day, as well as all the additional specs. And I know we really haven't covered too much of the RP2040 chip that is on here that manages some of the additional hardware requirements for this board. That is a partner. This board, RADXA, has a partnership with the Raspberry Pi Foundation that has that same chip that you could find on the Raspberry Pi 5. But again, there's so much to cover about this board. I'll probably do a second review as well as do a follow-up review. We have the brand new Palm Shell RADXA X2L as well. So I will have a side-by-side comparison. Some of you have asked for a breakdown for that, but I've had a great time playing with the RADXA X2L. Again, the entry-level price is $39. The board that you guys see here, the 8GB version, is $69.99. It took about 4 days to actually get here from overseas, but I promise you, this is one of the boards that I consider future-proof. It's x86. If you get tired of emulation, if you just want to use this for cloud gaming, Xbox Cloud Gaming ran phenomenally well on here, as well as use it for Steam or some of the other games or interfaces, maybe even Netflix. Again, you will not go wrong. This is not like one of those cheap ARM boards that you get and then it's obsolete by the time the next board comes out 4 or 5 days later. This is a wise investment. In fact, this board is ranked up there as one of my top single board computers. In fact, since this is one of the other x86 boards that is well under $100, this board has definitely changed the market, because in terms of what we can get for performance, emulation, and your price, the only drawback, there are a couple of drawbacks that I do have about this particular board. One is that it did not come with the M.2 set screw for the wireless module, and it did not come or does not come with the case. That's really the only drawbacks that I've really, had about it. But again, we have the Palm Shell coming out. You guys will see that, which is basically the same form factor, but it has everything already built in. But before I forget, let me show you guys how to install the Wi-Fi Bluetooth adapter drivers. That was something that took me a couple of weeks to finally get that sorted. The reason why I kind of also held off on the reviews because I did have it. And then, of course, I was working on Maximum Carnage. You got tied up with some other things. So for the final part of this video, I'm going to show you guys how to set up the Wi-Fi Bluetooth module adapter. And I think that will pretty much conclude the review. All right, so I'm going to try to keep some of this as short as possible. So in order to install the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth driver adapters, you do need to go to the RADXA website and download and extract all of the drivers that they do recommend directly on their website. However, I got really frustrated and this took me hours to figure out. It didn't matter, whatever it was, I downloaded. The Bluetooth drivers worked phenomenally well. That only took a few minutes. But for whatever reason, the Wi-Fi driver adapters would not recognize on this particular unit. So again, I put this project aside for about a good month, and it wasn't until April 23rd I decided to come back to it and figure it out. So in order to fix the Wi-Fi adapter drivers, you do need to install all your Raspberry Pi for the 2040 adapter drivers. All of that's pretty much straightforward. I'm not going to touch too much on that, as well as some of the video Intel graphic drivers. But specifically for the Wi-Fi adapter, you do need to type in the model number, which is what I did. I did a Google search because the Wi-Fi adapter that they sell is a generic Wi-Fi adapter. It is not specifically to RADXA. It is a generic driver adapter. So I typed in the model number, went to the ASUS website, and downloaded the drivers for the Wi-Fi Bluetooth adapter there. And lo and behold, that's when it finally worked. This took me weeks, this took me days, this took me hours because I was trying to do everything straightforward. Even reached out to the RADXA team. They provided me a link to download and use their drivers. For whatever reason, it still didn't work. I updated all of my my Windows drivers. It was a hassle. I'm just letting you guys know it was a pain in the butt. So if you run into that issue, just do a Google search on the model number of the Wi-Fi adapter. Go to ASUS's website. They have a download form or a download section. You can download that driver for that specific model. It's the exact same one. It's a very generic Wi-Fi adapter, and you will be up running instantly. So I hope that saved you guys a lot of headaches for those of you interested in getting that Wi-Fi adapter, because I was literally pulling my hair out to figure it out. So, but yeah, hope to get that saved you guys some time. But again, all in all, this is a phenomenal board, other than the 2 or 3 issues that I did have with it. The next video review, which will be the RADXA X2L Palm Shell, they did send that to me for review. You will not go wrong buying this board if you just want to use it for desktop purposes or whatever the case might be. But the Palm Shell, which you guys will see here in the next couple of days, does have that case for it. And as far as I know, they're not making any exclusive cases for the RADXA X2L. But for $69, I didn't break the bank. I'm getting up to PlayStation 2 emulation. There's really nothing to complain about. In fact, I think I even ran some Technoperiod on here. I ran some Alien Extermination. So that was also another cool thing. But again, it's not the most powerful processor that's out there on the market, but it is a phenomenal board. You will not go wrong with this. So it definitely gets my 2 thumbs up. It definitely meets my approval standards. So with that being said, please consider liking and subscribing. I will have some more information for all of you. I want to give you the best informal most information that you can possibly get on some of this stuff, because you're making a decision. It's not like you can walk into a retail store, look at it, examine it, and then make your own purchasing decision. So for me, I try to upload as much video footage and give you different possible working scenarios with it, so that way you have a better understanding and you can make a good decision about your purchases for your single board computer. So kiodiekin out. I will catch you guys later. Peace out. Bye-bye.